Welcome to our lecture on the general characteristics of chordates. Have you ever wondered how animals evolved from tiny, slow-moving creatures into massive, fast-swimming fish, soaring birds, and eventually us? Today, we are going to explore the brilliant biological blueprint that made all of this possible. We will uncover the 4 defining features of chordates and even use a bit of physics to understand exactly why this body plan was such a massive evolutionary leap. Let us dive in. To understand chordates, imagine you are trying to build a tall, sturdy tent in your backyard. If you just throw the fabric on the ground, it collapses into a shapeless pile. To give it structure and the ability to withstand the wind, you must insert a strong, flexible pole right down the middle. In the animal kingdom, nature faced a very similar engineering problem when trying to build larger, faster creatures. Instead of relying on heavy outer shells, like crabs or insects do, a special group of animals developed an internal, flexible rod to support their bodies. This internal skeleton allowed them to grow larger and move faster without collapsing under their own weight. Now that we understand the need for internal support, let us look at the first of the 4 defining features of a chordate, the notochord. The notochord is exactly that flexible, rod-like structure we just talked about, running along the animal's back. But why is this so revolutionary? Before the notochord, many invertebrates relied on slow crawling or inefficient wiggling. The notochord provided a rigid axis for muscles to pull against. When muscles on one side contract, the rod bends but does not compress, allowing for powerful, efficient, side-to-side swimming motions. This single feature completely changed how animals could move through their environment. With a new way to move, these animals also needed a better way to process information, which brings us to the second feature. Just above the notochord lies the dorsal hollow nerve cord. In many other animals, nerve cords are solid and run along the belly. But in chordates, this hollow tube runs along the back. This structure is absolutely critical because it allowed for the centralization of a complex nervous system. In more advanced chordates, the front end of this tube swells to become the brain, while the rest becomes the spinal cord. This centralization paved the way for high-level intelligence, rapid reflexes, and the complex behaviors we see in vertebrates today. Moving along the body plan, we find our third defining characteristic, pharyngeal slits. These are a series of openings in the throat region that connect the inside of the throat to the outside environment. Originally, these slits evolved as a way to filter food. Water would enter the mouth and exit through the slits, trapping food particles along the way. However, as chordates grew larger and more active, they needed more oxygen. These slits beautifully adapted to support gills, allowing for highly efficient breathing underwater. Even in humans, who do not have gills, these slits are clearly present during our early embryonic development, proving our shared evolutionary history. Finally, to complete this highly mobile body plan, we have the 4th feature, the postanal tail. In many non-chordate animals, the digestive tract runs the entire length of the body, ending at the very tip. But in chordates, the body extends past the anus, creating a dedicated tail structure. This tail is heavily muscled and supported by the notochord. Because it does not contain vital digestive organs, it is entirely optimized for locomotion. It acts like a powerful paddle, generating massive forward thrust in the water. Even if an animal, like a human or a frog, loses its visible tail before birth or during metamorphosis, its presence in the embryo is a hallmark of the chordate lineage. Now that we have discussed all four features, let us look at how they fit together in this diagram of a generalized chordate. Notice the yellow rod running along the back? That is the notochord, providing the main structural support. Right above it, you can see the blue tube, which is the dorsal hollow nerve cord, safely positioned along the back. Moving to the front, behind the mouth, we see the green pharyngeal slits, used for feeding and breathing. Finally, look at the bottom, where the digestive tract ends at the anus. The entire muscular section extending to the right of that point is the postanal tail. This elegant arrangement is the foundation for all vertebrate life. Seeing this body plan in action brings us to a fascinating question. Why were the notochord and tail such game changers for early chordates? The answer lies in the physics of moving through water. When any animal swims, it must overcome the viscosity, or the natural stickiness of the water. For tiny microscopic organisms, water feels like thick syrup. They are trapped by this stickiness. But the chordate body plan, with its stiff notochord and muscular tail, allowed these animals to grow significantly larger and swim much faster. By increasing their length and speed, chordates fundamentally shifted how they interacted with water. They moved from a microscopic world dominated by sticky friction to a macroscopic world dominated by momentum. To truly understand this shift from friction to momentum, we use a concept from fluid dynamics called the Reynolds number. This formula tells us whether inertial forces or viscous forces are controlling an animal's movement. Let us break down the symbols. Re is the Reynolds number itself, which has no units. The Greek letter rho stands for the density of the water. The variable v represents the swimming velocity of the chordate. The symbol L is the length of the animal, which is directly supported by the notochord. Finally, the Greek letter mu in the denominator represents the dynamic viscosity, or stickiness, of the water. Notice that length and velocity are in the numerator. This means that as a chordate grows longer or swims faster, its Reynolds number increases, allowing it to glide smoothly using momentum. Before we move on, let us see this formula in action with a concrete example. Imagine a primitive chordate, like a modern lancelet, swimming in the ocean. We are given the density of seawater as 1,025 and the viscosity as 0.001. Our animal has a body length of 0.05 meters and swims at 0.2 meters per second. We want to find its Reynolds number. First, we substitute these values into our equation, placing density, velocity, and length in the numerator and viscosity in the denominator. Multiplying the top values gives us an inertial force factor of 10.25. Dividing this by the viscosity gives a final Reynolds number of 10,250. Because this is much greater than 1, it proves the animal glides efficiently using momentum rather than fighting water friction. Now that we have calculated the Reynolds number for a small chordate, let us look at what happens when this body plan evolves to become much larger, like an early jawless fish. The water conditions, density and viscosity, remain exactly the same. However, this new chordate has a longer notochord, giving it a length of 0.5 meters, and it swims much faster at 1.5 meters per second. We substitute these new, larger values into our formula. Multiplying the numerator gives us a massive inertial force factor of 768.75. Dividing by the viscosity yields a staggering Reynolds number of 768,750. This calculation shows exactly how increasing size and speed exponentially increases the momentum an animal can generate. This massive Reynolds number we just calculated leads us to a profound biological conclusion. An extremely high value indicates that the larger chordate experiences almost no relative viscous drag compared to its massive forward momentum. It can coast through the water with incredible efficiency, hunt prey effectively, and escape predators with ease. But generating this much force requires incredibly strong muscles. Without the internal notochord, the animal's body would simply buckle and collapse under its own muscular contractions. The notochord ensures all that energy is directed into forward thrust. This mathematical reality perfectly illustrates why the four general characteristics of chordates were so absolutely vital for the evolution of large, dominant animals on Earth. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us summarize the most important ideas. First, remember that the phylum Chordata is defined by four unique anatomical features: the notochord, the dorsal hollow nerve cord, pharyngeal slits, and a postanal tail. Second, these features act as a brilliant biological blueprint, providing the internal support and centralized nervous control needed for complex life. Finally, as we proved mathematically using the Reynolds number, this specific body plan allowed chordates to overcome physical limitations, grow larger, and move faster. You have now seen the exact evolutionary steps that paved the way for fish, birds, and even humans to thrive. Excellent work today.